Hello and welcome. My name is Cordell Green, Chairman of the UNESCO Information for All program, IFA, Working Group on Information Accessibility. Welcome to the Artificial Intelligence for Information Accessibility podcast, organized by Carnegie Council for Ethics in International Affairs. Your host is Ayushi Kemka, a PhD student at the University of Alberta.
Today we have with us Dr. László Karvalics. Karvalics is the founding director of the BME UNESCO Information Society and Trend Research Institute. He is also an associate professor and former head of the Department of Cultural Heritage and Human Information Science at the University of Szeged. Thank you for joining us, László. We are so happy to have you here today. My first question to you is, why don't you tell us a bit about how you came to be involved in AI and ethics and what you are working on at the moment?
Yes, I'm a historian, and specifically, I studied to deal with information history, and I tried to compose a historical reconstruction of information technology solutions, a typology of it. So first time I run into the problems of computing, automatization, intelligence augmentation as a part of my historical research. And it was extremely interesting to identify that the basic questions of artificial intelligence narrative are older than anybody in the stage is expected ever. So the story starts in the Paleolithic age, when the hunter-gatherers made their first traps with a release and retarder mechanism, which is absolutely equivalent with the if-then gate of the programmers. So artificial intelligence in this approach is a very, very, very long story, and it was obvious to finish the information technology typology with hot potatoes of artificial intelligence from this atypical perspective. Just let me to mention one very important point. Information researchers are defining the different information technologies alongside with the natural or original information cycle, the stages of information activity, which is described most popularly by the so-called OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, act. And we can make the categories of mind augmenting technologies alongside this typology. So if we try to find the place of artificial intelligence in this typology, it is not the observation stage. These are the sensors. It is not the orientation stage, because this is the word of semantics, the meaning generation. It is the human brain, the human mind. It is not the decision, because it is the human mind which makes decisions. And it is in the act, in the last stage of this information cycle, because there is a very special act, objectivation of information, which means that we make signs from the information in our brains. And it is extremely important to understand that coding and decoding and recombine these signs is just a very narrow field of our information behavior. And when we can automatize this type of information behavior, and we support our numeric ability or numeric skills, and we construct machines which are able to compute in an enormous capacity. The place of artificial intelligence in our information behavior in this very special angle. So when I approach to the artificial intelligence field, I always highlight this important fact that we are talking about a very special supportive technology, and all the nightmares and moral panic scenarios about artificial intelligence is just a consequence of ignoring this very basic and important aspect, that artificial intelligence entities are not making other things or activity than compute in an extreme velocity and nothing else. So all the metaphors of its performance, like learning, decision making, or later sensing, they are good. They are bad verbs and wrong metaphors. So I think it is very important to clarify in this first step of our conversation that I think that there is nothing dangerous in artificial intelligence. The danger is coming from structures, institutions, values, people, and old school thinking and badly designed institutions, and not from our beautiful technology itself.
That is so informational, László. I'm thinking also in terms of when you talk about AI not being as dangerous as it sometimes is made out to be. Like, how are those issues also related to information accessibility? And since like our AI4IA conference is also coming up, do you expect more such conversations from that conference, or like what are your expectations from it?
Yes, so I think that in my vocabulary, IA is intelligence augmentation, which is the key expression. We have a lot of technologies, tools, and cultural weapons to augment our intelligence, and the so-called artificial intelligence technologies are just one cluster or one set of these solutions. So I hope that in this conference we can talk about more about the human brain and supporting mental work and decision-making competency with and by machine systems. So I think it can be a very innovative subtopic, how to use artificial intelligence for intelligence augmentation in in a new way or with new technologies.
Great. I also just want to go back to the point where you were talking about AI and the dangers that institutions also bring into it. So I'm kind of thinking in terms of like when we approach AI through a technological lens in terms of its engineering and structures or institutions, if you want to call that, where do you think, if at all, we bring in a social consciousness?
Mm.
Or can we imagine AI conversations in these binaries of the technological and the social, or do you think there are overlaps?
Yeah, as the technology development, the production part is always within the economic and political dimension. But the usage and the transformation of these technologies into parts of our everyday life is always social, and the gap is that of course a business approach or a business driven decision making is always counting with possible users, margins, profit, and this approach doesn't count with civilization challenges, needs of local communities, and the cultural aspects or other important issues. So that's why the big mystery is how to generate a new kind of loop to influence the business development from a social perspective, trying to identify the profit from another angle or another perspective, which is not only in monetary terms, but in a social good, as a social good. So this AI for social good narrative can be a good starting point to extend the discourse into this direction, because there is no business activity without well-designed outcomes and incomes. So if we can share special social needs with developers, and we can convince the political elite to allocate resources for these goals, maybe a new trilateral conversation with business, politics, and society can lead to a lot of new developments in this AI for social good arena.
Right. I'm also thinking right now of the Google AI debate, wherein a lot of people had been like there has been definitely a lot of conjecture around Google's AI becoming sentient. Do you have any thoughts on that? And I'm also trying to sort of like make meaning as like people who do not necessarily are working in the fields of AI. So like how does that debate or like how do these debates affect a regular person's life?
Yes, I have a very extreme position about this debate. If we are talking about the Google developer who started to talk about the sensing AI and the super intelligent AI. So that's why I started with my position that AI doesn't think, doesn't feel, doesn't decide, just simply computes. So there is no such an entity that sensing AI or thinking AI or learning AI. They are algorithm engineers and computing machines. and that's why this statement is a foolish statement. So from a Google perspective, it was a very, very logical step to kick off this guy because his position was absolutely dilettante. So I am with the Google in this situation. However, don't forget that this dumb machine, which I'm talking about, this dumb machine is a superb tool to overcome our shortages in several fields. So, in the medical field, processing scientific data, and on a lot of other domains, we are not able to solve problems without this support, without this machine. But we do not need the overemphasized tabloidic approach, which is only focus position is the potential danger of AI for us.
Right, that's quite insightful. And I'm also wondering, like, when we are talking about algorithms, we can't like not talk about social media at large as well, because oftentimes those two terms just go hand in hand these days. Um, so like because our topic of the conference is also around information accessibility and not just AI, and social media is often we often consider social media as a platform wherein a lot of information is accessible to a large number of people and just like available at their fingertips.
Yes.
Do you think what do you think about the concerns over privacy of data that come along with it?
Yes, I think that the privacy of data is a valid discourse, of course, in a social media content. But the usage and the patterns of usage of useful information through social media is far more important context than the privacy problem. It is very easy to deal with the privacy problems, but the 90% of the discourses are about this privacy problem, and we do not talk about enough about the benefits of this enormous information stream through social media. And when we are talking about fake news or post-truth era context, it's easy to forget that that the information cycle only starts with the input information or news or data. But this is the observe stage. But the orient stage is the empire of brains. So the meaning is always a result or an outcome of a meeting of the data and the brain. And so it is not about the data, but it is about the brains and the usage of this information. And of course, there are a lot of bad usage of information, but it's easy to forget the other side, that the majority of usage is extremely useful. That's why the social media companies are successful and rich, because they serve enormous needs, enormous information needs. And of course, during this process, there can be problems. There can be problems with the privacy of data. But we have a lot of tools to overcome on this situation, and just one example that when we are talking about the infodemic in a context of pandemic, infodemic like a poisoned content or fake information. What is the medicine in the majority of the literature is critical media literacy, which means that first of all we have to adjust the brains to be able to clear this information stream as we are clearing the water which we drink. We can clear the information stream which we consume, and our tools are revolving around our brains and not around the machines. The fake news detecting pages are run by people who can understand meanings, who can check facts, who can find misinformation. And it is about, again, about human brains and not about the machine.
Now that we're talking about misinformation and disinformation, I'm also like, are there some ways in which you think maybe different stakeholders can approach this problem and not just like a regular person consuming this content, be it in terms of AI developers or government organizations or social media platforms themselves? Do you think there's a way in which we could all tackle this situation altogether?
Yeah, it's again the proportionality of so first of all, it's a proportionality issue. So if you compare the fake or poisoned information, its quantity and strength and its reproduction skills, and compare it with the non-fake, the useful, the important information, the size, the difference is enormous. So we think that, so we overemphasize the importance of fake news and infodemic content in the giant stream of information, and we forgot that even if somehow there will be act after decision using false income considerations, it doesn't mean that there is no millions or trillions successful information cycles on the other side. So a fake news means nothing if there is no fake act from this fake news, or there is no overwriting of this fake news by personal experience or using other relevant information. So this field is an important field to analyze, to understand, to cope with, but its importance is very limited comparing to its very, very loud existence in our everyday debates.
For my last question, László, I would want to circle back to our conversation on information accessibility a bit. When we talk about information preservation, because like there's a huge body of work that has been engaging with the whole idea of information preservation, be it researchers or industries or policymakers or so on. Do you think that automatically implies information accessibility, or like are those two different concepts which get conflated together?
No, it doesn't imply automatically accessibility. Of course, this is two separate empires of the information ecosystem. Information preservation is extremely important, not to lose information before its digitization. So that's why the endangered cultural heritage objects, not only the textual one, but visual or artifactual ones, are extremely important to digitize, because if they are parts of this endless digital ecosystem, they are potentially accessible. Of course, the actual accessibility depends on a lot of other issues. So perhaps the findability, generating metadata, transcending the language problems, transcending the reading of manuscript, the digitized manuscript, the transcription of these manuscripts, and so on and so on and so on. So there are a lot of problems, but what is important is to get all these digitized information potentially accessible. And if they are potentially accessible, and there is a way to find them, or the information professionals can help a lot for different target groups to find the relevant information. I think this is the brave new world of the information ecosystem. But the first step is always the digitization, the preservation through digitization.
Perfect. I think that brings us to the end of our episode with you, László. Thank you so much. You've definitely given us some really interesting insights. One of my favorites was your strong position on Google's AI debate, and I love it when people have that. Thank you so much for coming and joining us for the podcast, László.
Thank you very much, Ayushi. All the best for you.
The AI4IA Conference and podcast series is being hosted in collaboration with AI for Society, Kule Institute for Advanced Studies at the University of Alberta, Center for New Economic Diplomacy at ORF India, and the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica.